The lawyer's voice was polished, professional, the kind of voice trained to deliver devastation without emotion. "Miss Johnson, all you have to do is sign. $50,000, and this unfortunate situation disappears." Kamari sat on the edge of her dorm room bed, the cramped space suddenly feeling like a cage. Across from her, a man in a suit that cost more than her tuition slid. Documents across her tiny desk, like he was closing a business deal. She was barely 6 weeks pregnant, not even showing yet. But somehow, Preston's family had already mobilized their attorneys, already calculated her worth, already decided that erasing her was simply a line item on their quarterly budget. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that their betrayal didn't just break your heart, it shattered your entire world? Have you ever sat across from someone offering you money to pretend your love never existed, knowing that the man who swore he'd fight for you was too weak to even deliver the blow himself? 19-year-old Kamari Johnson faced that choice when the Whitmore family, heirs to a billion-dollar empire, offered her $50,000 to disappear, $50,000 to sign away her voice, $50,000 to erase the life growing inside her. What would you do? Would you take the money and run? After all, $50,000 could buy formula, diapers, maybe a fresh start in a new city where nobody knew your shame. Or would you choose the harder path, the one where you keep your dignity but lose everything else? Welcome back to Mr. Roman's Story Vault, where real stories meet life's hardest lessons. If you're new here, I'm Mr. Roman, and today's story will challenge everything you believe about love, family, and what it really means to be wealthy. Before we begin this incredible journey, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, after you hear what Kamari built from the ashes of betrayal, you'll understand why our community of story lovers keeps growing. This isn't just another riches to rags story. This is about a 19-year-old college student who fell for the wrong prince, got pregnant, and lost everything. Her boyfriend, her parents, her education, her home. But what she did next would change not just her life, but the lives of hundreds of women who found themselves in similar situations. How does a teenage mother go from sleeping in a pay-by-the-week motel to running a multi-million-dollar company? How does she transform abandonment into triumph? And what happens when, years later, the billionaire who abandoned her realizes what he truly lost? Today, you'll discover why sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the foundation for your greatest victory. You'll learn why the family that throws you out might not be the family you were meant to have. Most importantly, you'll understand why true wealth has nothing to do with bank accounts. Let me take you back to where it all began, not in the rain, not with tears, but with spilled champagne, nervous laughter, and a love story that everyone thought would be different. The Four Seasons Ballroom in downtown Atlanta glittered with crystal chandeliers and old money. The annual Children's Literacy Foundation Gala brought together the city's wealthiest families. Tech, moguls, real estate tycoons, politicians whose smiles were as polished as their campaign promises. Kamari Johnson had no business being there. Well, technically she did. Emory University's business club had volunteered to help with event coordination, and as the club's most reliable sophomore, Kamari had drawn the short straw for champagne service duty. She moved through the crowd in her borrowed black dress, her roommate Destiny's 2 sizes too big, cinched at the waist with a belt she'd found at Goodwill. At 19 years old, Kamari carried herself with a quiet confidence that belied her circumstances. Her deep mahogany skin glowed under the chandelier lights, and her natural hair was twisted into an elegant updo that had taken 3 YouTube tutorials and 2 hours to perfect. She was beautiful in the way that didn't require designer labels to prove it, the kind of beautiful that wealthy men noticed and wealthy women resented. Growing up in College Park just south of Atlanta, Kamari had learned early that beauty without strategy was useless. Her father, Deacon Marcus Johnson, ran a small construction company during the week and ran the congregation at Greater Hope Baptist Church every Sunday. Her mother, Loretta, taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school and spent her evenings making sure Kamari understood that education was her only ticket out. "You're not going to marry your way to success," her mother used to say while pressing Kamari's Sunday dress. "You're going to earn it. Books before boys. Degrees before dating." Kamari had taken those words to heart. She'd graduated valedictorian from her high school, earned a partial scholarship to Emory, and maintained a 3.8 gigapascals while working part-time at the campus library. Boys weren't even on her radar. Her parents hadn't allowed her to date until she turned 18, and by that point, she was too focused on her 5-year plan to care about romance. That was before she collided with Preston Whitmore III. It happened near the ice sculpture, a ridiculous swan that cost more than her tuition. Kamari was carrying a tray of champagne flutes, navigating through clusters of guests who looked right through her like she was part of the furniture. She turned left when she should have turned right. The tray tilted, the glasses slid, and 12 ounces of Dom Perignon splashed directly onto a pair of Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than her father's truck. Time stopped. Kamari looked up, past the tailored navy suit, past the silk tie, past the broad shoulders, into a pair of ocean blue eyes that crinkled with amusement rather than anger. Preston Whitmore III was 24 years old, 6'2", with sandy, brown hair that fell across his forehead like he'd just stepped off a yacht. He was the only son of Preston Whitmore Jr., whose tech conglomerate had revolutionized data security, software, and generated a net worth that Forbes estimated at $4.7 billion. He was everything Kamari had been taught to avoid. Rich, white, privileged. The kind of man who'd never worked a day in his life, who'd never wondered if the electricity would stay on, who'd never eaten cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row because payday was still 2 days away. "I am so sorry," Kamari stammered, dropping to her knees to grab napkins from a nearby table. "I wasn't looking where I was going. These shoes, I can pay for them. I mean, not right now, but I can set up a payment plan or—" "Hey." His voice was warm, gentle. He crouched down beside her, taking the napkins from her trembling hands. "It's okay. They're just shoes." "They're not just shoes," she protested. "Those are Berluti. I saw them in a magazine. They cost like $4,000. Preston laughed, a genuine sound that made heads turn. "You know your Italian leather. I know how to read price tags and feel inadequate." He smiled at that, really smiled, and something shifted in his expression. "What's your name?" "Kamari." "Kamari Johnson." "Well, Kamari Johnson," he said, standing and offering her his hand to help her up. "I'm Preston, and I think you owe me a conversation to make up for my ruined shoes." She should have said no. Every lesson her parents had taught her, every warning her mother had whispered, every sermon her father had preached about unequal yoking, all of it screamed at her to walk away. Instead, she took his hand. Preston Whitmore didn't do subtle. The day after the gala, 3 dozen roses arrived at Kamari's dorm room. Not red. He'd somehow learned that red roses felt cliché to her. These were lavender, her favorite color, with a handwritten note tucked between the stems. "Dinner? I promised to wear waterproof shoes." Destiny nearly lost her mind. "Girl, do you know who this man is? His family owns half of Buckhead. His daddy plays golf with senators. His mama probably has the Pope on speed dial." "Which is exactly why I shouldn't go," Kamari said, though she couldn't stop staring at the flowers. "Which is exactly why you should. When's the last time you did something just for you? Not for your GPA, not for your parents, not for your 5-year plan. Just for you?" Kamari couldn't remember. She texted Preston that evening, "1 dinner. That's it." His response came in seconds. "That's all I need." 1 dinner became 2. 2 became 10. Within 3 weeks, Kamari found herself living a double life she'd never anticipated. By day, she was the same focused, driven student her parents expected, attending classes, studying in the library, calling home every Sunday after church. By night, she was discovering a world she'd only seen in movies. Preston took her to restaurants where the menus didn't list prices, because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. He flew her to Savannah on a private jet, just to have brunch at her favorite cafe she'd mentioned seeing on Instagram. He bought out an entire movie theater so they could watch her favorite film without interruption. But what surprised Kamari most wasn't the extravagance. It was the intimacy. Preston listened, really listened. When she talked about her dreams of starting a consulting firm that would help minority-owned businesses compete with corporations, he didn't offer to fund it or solve her problems. He asked questions. He challenged her ideas. He treated her ambitions like they mattered just as much as his billion-dollar deals. "You're different," he told her one night as they sat in his Tesla at a lookout point, watching planes descend into Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. "Everyone I meet wants something from me. My name, my connections, my wallet. You don't look at me like a bank account." "Maybe because I know what it's like to be reduced to one thing," Kamari replied, leaning into his shoulder. "People look at me and see stereotypes. A black girl from the South, probably here on affirmative action, probably not as smart as she thinks she is. They don't see my dreams. They don't see my heart." Preston turned to her, his fingers gently lifting her chin. "I see all of it," he whispered, "every single part of you." When he kissed her, the Atlanta skyline blurred into nothing. There was only his lips, his warmth, and a feeling she'd never experienced before, the terrifying, exhilarating sensation of falling in love. By month 2, Preston had infiltrated every corner of her life. He showed up to her step team competition, the only white face in a sea of black families, and cheered louder than anyone when her team won first place. He sat in her cramped dorm room while she studied for midterms, quizzing her on business ethics while eating ramen noodles like it was gourmet cuisine. In return, Kamari introduced him to her world. She taught him to make her grandmother's mac and cheese, the real kind, with 3 types of cheese and a breadcrumb crust. She played him Frankie Beverly and Maze, showed him how to two-step, explained why Sunday dinner wasn't just a meal but a sacred tradition. "I've never met anyone like you," Preston confessed one evening as they danced in his penthouse kitchen, Luther Vandross crooning from the speakers. "You make me want to be better than what my family expects." "What does your family expect?" He hesitated. "Someone who looks like them, thinks like them, comes from their world." "And what do you want?" Preston pulled her closer, his lips brushing her forehead. "I want you, Kamari, only you." At the end of their 3rd month together, Preston handed her a small velvet box. Kamari's heart stopped. They'd only been dating 12 weeks. It couldn't possibly be. Inside was a single silver key. "To my penthouse," he explained, watching her expression. "I want you to have a place that's ours, where you can study, relax, exist without worrying about roommates or noise or anything else. What's mine is yours." She should have seen the warning signs, the secrecy, the way he never posted her on social media, the fact that his parents had been in Switzerland for months, conveniently avoiding any introduction. But love has a way of making us blind to what we don't want to see. The first Sunday Kamari brought Preston to her parents' house, she knew it was a mistake before they even reached the front porch. Her father stood in the doorway, arms crossed, still wearing his church suit. Behind him, her mother clutched a dish towel like she was preparing for battle. The Johnson home was modest, a 3-bedroom brick house with plastic-covered furniture and Bible verses framed on every wall. It wasn't much, but it had been filled with love and stability her entire life. Now it felt like enemy territory. "Mama, Daddy, this is Preston," Kamari said, her voice steadier than her hands. "Preston, these are my parents, Marcus and Loretta Johnson." Preston extended his hand with practiced charm. "It's an honor to meet you both. Kamari has told me so much about you." Her father didn't take the offered hand. "I'm sure she has. And I'm sure she's told you that in this house, we follow the Lord's commandments." "Daddy, I didn't ask for your input, Kamari." Marcus Johnson's voice carried the weight of 20 years behind the pulpit. "Young man, what are your intentions with my daughter?" "I love her, sir. I want to build a future with her." "Love." Her father practically spat the word. "Do you know what the Bible says about being unequally yoked? 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers." "Daddy, Preston believes in God. Does he believe in our God?" Does he understand what it means to be a black woman in this country? Can his money protect her from the hatred she'll face walking beside him? The dinner that followed was the longest 2 hours of Kamari's life. Her mother tried to keep conversation light, complimenting Preston on his appetite, asking about his studies. But her father questioned every answer, dissected every response, made it clear through scripture and silence that Preston Whitmore III was not welcome in his home. That could have gone better, Preston said afterward, sitting in his car outside her parents' house. I'm sorry. I should have prepared you more. Kamari, I'm not giving up. I don't care if your father disapproves. I don't care if my parents disapprove. I love you, and I'm going to prove it. His parents became a different kind of challenge entirely. Preston Whitmore Jr. and Margaret Whitmore were spending the winter in their Swiss chalet, but that didn't stop them from interfering. Preston's phone calls with them became increasingly tense, arguments that he tried to hide from Kamari, but that she overheard in fragments. She's a phase, Preston. His mother's voice came through the phone one evening when he thought Kamari was asleep. A beautiful phase, I'm sure, but a phase nonetheless. When you're ready to settle down with someone appropriate, we'll discuss your future. She's not a phase, Mother. I'm in love with her. Love fades, darling. Legacy is forever. Do you really want to introduce a woman like her to our world? Think of the country club, the board meetings, the foundation galas. She doesn't belong. Preston defended her. Every time, he defended her. But the damage was done. Kamari began to understand that their love existed in a bubble, beautiful but fragile, one sharp word away from bursting. The promise ring came in month 5. It wasn't an engagement ring, Preston was clear about that, but it was a promise, a thin gold band with a small diamond chip, something Kamari could wear without attracting too much attention. This is my commitment to you, Preston said, slipping it on her finger. I know things are complicated right now. My parents, your parents, all of it. But I need you to know that I'm serious about us, about our future. Kamari wore the ring on a chain around her neck, hidden beneath her clothes. She told herself it was to protect their privacy, to avoid questions she wasn't ready to answer. Looking back, she realized she was already hiding, already shrinking, already making herself small enough to fit into a world that wasn't designed for her. But at 19, in love for the first time, she couldn't see what was coming. She couldn't see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, couldn't hear the countdown clock ticking toward the moment when everything would fall apart. All she could see was Preston's smile. All she could feel was his hand in hers. All she could believe was that love would be enough. It never occurred to her that the people who claim to love us are sometimes the ones capable of hurting us the most. Now, before we continue with Kamari's story, I need to ask you something. Have you ever loved someone despite everyone telling you it was wrong? Have you ever chosen your heart over the warnings in your head? If so, drop a comment below and let me know, because what happens next in Kamari's journey will make you question everything you believe about sacrifice and love. And, if you're not already subscribed to Mr. Roman's Story Vault, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, because the next chapter of Kamari's story is where everything begins to crumble, and you don't want to miss a single moment. 6 months into their relationship, Kamari received a text that should have been routine but sent ice through her veins. Parents are back from Switzerland, dinner Saturday at the club, 7 p.m. Wear something nice, I love you. Preston Jr. and Margaret Whitmore had spent the past 6 months in their Swiss chalet, managing European business interests and conveniently avoiding the reality of their son's relationship. But winter had ended, and apparently so had their patience. You'll be fine, Preston assured her that Friday night as they lay in his penthouse. My mother's bark is worse than her bite. My father just needs to see how brilliant you are. Kamari wanted to believe him. She'd bought a dress she couldn't afford, a simple black sheath from Nordstrom rack that still cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She'd gotten her hair professionally styled for the first time in her life. She'd practiced conversation topics that would make her sound sophisticated, educated, worthy. None of it mattered. The capital city club sat in the heart of Buckhead, all old money and older prejudices. As Kamari walked through the marble entrance on Preston's arm, she felt eyes following her. not admiring, but assessing, calculating, judging. Preston's parents waited at a corner table, positioned like royalty granting an audience. Preston Jr. was an older, harder version of his son. Same blue eyes, but cold where Preston's were warm. Margaret Whitmore wore pearls that probably cost more than Kamari's, tuition and a smile that didn't reach her surgically perfected face. "Mother, father," Preston said, his hand tightening protectively around Kamari's waist. "This is Kamari Johnson. Kamari, my parents. How lovely to finally meet you," Margaret said, her voice dripping with southern politeness that barely masked contempt. "Preston has told us so much about you, though he failed to mention how striking you are." The way she said striking made it sound like an accusation. Dinner was an interrogation disguised as small talk. Margaret asked questions designed to highlight every difference between Kamari's world and theirs. "Where did you say your family is from, dear?" "College Park, ma'am. It's just south of—" "I know where College Park is." Margaret's smile never wavered. "And your father's profession?" "He owns a construction company. Johnson and Sons Construction." "How quaint." "And your mother?" "She teaches 3rd grade at Robert E. Lee Elementary." Preston Jr. set down his scotch. "Public school?" "Yes, sir. She's been there for 15 years. The conversation continued like this, each answer revealing another gap between their worlds. What church did they attend? 2 Baptist. Where had Kamari summered as a child? Nowhere. Summer meant VBS and helping her father on job sites. What were her post-graduation plans? Working, not charity galas and European vacations. Then Margaret went for the killing blow. "Preston tells us you're at Emory on scholarship. That must be such a blessing for your family. I can't imagine the financial burden otherwise." "Mother," Preston tried to interrupt, "I'm simply saying that education is expensive, dear, especially at a prestigious institution like Emory, and with your father's business being so small, well, one never knows when financial difficulties might arise." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Preston Jr. leaned forward, abandoning all pretense of civility. "Let me be direct, Miss Johnson. My son has a responsibility to this family, to our legacy, to the empire we've built over 3 generations. His future has been planned since birth. The right schools, the right connections, the right marriage. And I'm not right." Kamari's voice was steady, even as her hands trembled in her lap. "You're lovely, I'm sure," Margaret interjected. "But surely you understand the complications. The optics alone would be damaging to our family's reputation. And then there's the matter of compatibility. You come from such different circumstances." "We love each other," Preston said, his jaw clenched. "That's what matters." His father laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Love? Son, love is a luxury people like us can't afford. You have obligations. The board expects you to take over as COO next year. How will that look when you're dating a scholarship student from College Park? I don't care what the board thinks. Then perhaps you should care about what happens to Miss Johnson's family." Preston Jr. pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like a document. Johnson and Sons Construction. Current contracts with 3 commercial developers, all of whom have business relationships with Whitmore Industries. It would be unfortunate if those relationships were to change. Kamari's blood ran cold. "You're threatening my father's business?" "I'm explaining reality," he replied. "In our world, associations matter. If you continue this relationship with my son, those associations might become problematic for your family. Permits might be delayed. Inspections might become more thorough. Contracts might not be renewed." "That's extortion," Kamari whispered. Margaret reached across the table, her manicured hand covering Kamari's. "Think of it as protection, dear. We're saving you both from a difficult situation. You seem like a smart girl. Surely you know this relationship has no future. Better to end it now before anyone gets hurt." "Before I hurt your reputation, you mean? Before you waste years of your life on something that can never work?" Margaret withdrew her hand. "We're prepared to offer you a settlement. $50,000. Finish your education, start your career. Find someone more suitable to your background. Preston stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. We're leaving. Sit down, Preston, his father commanded. No. I won't sit here while you insult the woman I love and threaten her family. Then you leave us no choice. Preston Jr. stood as well, buttoning his suit jacket. You have 1 week to end this relationship. If you don't, we'll remove you from the company, freeze your trust fund, and make sure Miss Johnson's father never works in Atlanta again. And that's just the beginning. Margaret added her own final touch. We've already had our attorneys look into his business, dear. There are always irregularities when one looks closely enough. Tax issues, permit violations, worker complaints. It would be terrible if the IRS decided to audit him, wouldn't it? Kamari felt the room closing in. Her father's business was his life's work. He'd built it from nothing, working 18-hour days to send her to college. If the Whitmores destroyed it out of spite— Think about it, Margaret said sweetly. You have 1 week. Preston didn't sleep that night. Kamari found him at 3 a.m. on his penthouse balcony, staring at the Atlanta skyline like it held answers to questions he didn't want to ask. We'll figure this out, she said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Your parents are bluffing. They're not. His voice was hollow. I've seen them destroy people for less. Business rivals who got in their way, employees who knew too much. They don't make threats they won't follow through on. Then we tell them to go to hell. We build our own life. Preston turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. Kamari, you don't understand what they're capable of. They have connections everywhere. Judges, politicians, business leaders. They could blacklist your father from every construction project in Georgia. They could make sure you never get hired at any major corporation. They could do a lot of things, but they can't make me stop loving you. He kissed her then, desperate and clinging, like a drowning man reaching for shore. But over the next 48 hours, Kamari watched Preston crumble. Monday morning, he had a 2-hour meeting with his father and the family attorneys. He came back to the penthouse, ashen-faced and silent. When Kamari asked what happened, he just shook his head and poured himself scotch at 11 a.m. Tuesday, she noticed the pill bottle on his bathroom counter. Xanax, prescribed just that morning. It's just to take the edge off, he explained when she confronted him. The pressure at work has been intense. This isn't about work, Preston. This is about us. Everything is about us right now. He'd never yelled at her before. Every meeting, every phone call, every conversation with my parents, it all comes back to you and how I'm destroying everything they built by being with you. So, what are you saying? You want to end this? No. God, no. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I just need time to think, to figure out a strategy. But strategies required clear thinking, and Preston was falling apart. Wednesday evening, Kamari used her key to enter his penthouse and found it dark except for the glow from his laptop. She followed the light to his office, where Preston sat, surrounded by legal documents, contracts, trust fund agreements, corporate bylaws. They've tied everything up, he said without looking at her. My position in the company, my inheritance, even the penthouse. It's all contingent on following their directives. If I defy them, I lose everything. You'd still have me. Would the first? He finally looked at her, and his eyes were red-rimmed. Would you still love me when I can't afford to take you to nice restaurants? When I'm living in a studio apartment instead of a penthouse? When I'm just another guy trying to make it in Atlanta instead of Preston Whitmore III? The question hurt more than he realized. You think I'm with you for your money? I think you've never known me without it. Neither have I. I don't know who I am without the Whitmore name. Thursday morning, Kamari woke up nauseous. She'd been throwing up for days now, exhausted, queasy, emotional. She blamed it on stress. The situation with Preston's parents would make anyone sick. She spent the day in classes, barely able to concentrate. Her business ethics professor droned on about corporate responsibility and moral obligations and all. Kamari could think was how people without billions seemed to have clearer morals than those with them. That evening, Preston texted, working late, "Don't wait up." But at midnight, Unable to sleep, Kamari drove to his office building downtown. His Tesla was in the parking garage, but he wasn't answering his phone. She sweet-talked the night security guard, an older black man who took pity on her, into letting her up. She found Preston in his car, not his office. He was sitting in the driver's seat in the dark parking garage, shoulders shaking with sobs. Kamari had never seen him cry before. She opened the passenger door and slid in without a word. For a long moment, they just sat there, him crying, her holding his hand. "I don't know what to do," he finally whispered. "I love you, Kamari. I love you so much it terrifies me, but they're going to destroy everything. Your father, your future, even my ability to help you. And maybe they're right. Right about what? That I'm being selfish, that loving you is hurting you, that the best thing I could do is let you go before they tear your whole world apart." Kamari felt something crack inside her chest. "Preston, look at me." He turned, tears streaming down his face. "I need you to decide something right now. Are you with me or with them? Because I can handle your parents' threats. I can handle losing money or status or whatever else they think matters, but I can't handle you giving up on us. I'm not giving up. I just need time to—" "There is no time. They gave us a week. We're already halfway through it." She cupped his face in her hands. "Choose, Preston. Choose me or choose them, but choose now." He closed his eyes, more tears falling. "Can I have until Saturday? Please. Let me think clearly, talk to some people, see if there's a way through this." Kamari wanted to scream that if he truly loved her, there would be no hesitation. But she also saw a man who'd never had to fight for anything in his life, who was being forced to choose between everything he'd ever known and everything he'd ever wanted. "Saturday," she agreed. "But Preston, I need you to know something. Whatever you decide, I'm keeping my dignity. I'm not taking their money. I'm not disappearing. I'm not pretending we didn't happen. I wouldn't ask you to." But even as he said it, they both knew he was lying. Friday morning, Kamari threw up for the 5th day in a row. Destiny found her in their dorm bathroom, hunched over the toilet, looking like death. "Girl, you need to see a doctor. This isn't normal stress. It's just everything with Preston. The anxiety is making me sick." "Kamari," Destiny's voice went soft. "When was your last period?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Kamari's mind raced backward through the calendar. Midterms, the gala, spring break. When had she last? Oh God, when? Kamari. January. Maybe early February. I'm not regular, you know that. Stress makes me skip sometimes. And you've been stressed for 2 months. Destiny grabbed her purse. "We're going to CVS. Right now. I can't be pregnant. I'm on birth control. Birth control is 99% effective, which means 1% of the time, life has other plans." The walk to CVS felt surreal. It was a beautiful March morning, the kind of Atlanta. Spring day where the dogwoods bloom and the air smells like possibility. Families walked by with strollers. Couples held hands. The world continued turning while Kamari's might be ending. Destiny bought 3 different pregnancy tests for accuracy and a bottle of water. They returned to the dorm in silence. "You want me to wait outside?" Destiny asked as they reached their bathroom. "No. I need you here." The first test required 3 minutes. Kamari sat on the bathroom floor, counting seconds that felt like hours. Destiny sat beside her, holding her hand. At 2 minutes and 47 seconds, a second pink line appeared. "Maybe it's faulty," Kamari whispered. "Take another one." The second test showed the same result. So did the third. Pregnant. Kamari stared at those pink lines like they were written in a language she didn't understand. Pregnant. At 19 years old, unmarried, in the middle of watching her relationship collapse, with parents who would disown her and a boyfriend who couldn't decide if she was worth fighting for. Pregnant. "What are you going to do?" Destiny asked quietly. "I don't know. I don't—" Kamari's breath came in short gasps. "His parents already hate me. This will give them exactly what they need to destroy me. They'll say I trapped him. They'll say I got pregnant on purpose to secure their money. Did you?" No. God, no. I've been taking my pills every day. I don't know how this happened. Destiny pulled her into a hug. Okay, we figure this out. First question, do you want to keep it? Did she? Kamari placed her hand on her stomach, still flat, showing no sign of the life growing inside. A baby. Preston's baby. A child who would be half her, half him, bomb into a world that didn't want them to exist. But underneath the fear and confusion, Kamari felt something else. Something small but insistent. A flicker of joy, of possibility, of love, for this tiny cluster of cells that had somehow taken root despite 99% odds. I want to keep it, she heard herself say. I don't know how, and I don't know what happens next, but I want this baby. Then you tell Preston. Today, I can't. He's in Tokyo until tomorrow. Some emergency business deal his father set up, probably to keep him away from me while he thinks clearly. Then you tell him tomorrow. The second he lands, Kamari nodded, her mind already racing. She'd tell him Saturday evening, like they'd planned. Maybe the news would change things. Maybe knowing he was going to be a father would give him the courage to stand up to his parents. Maybe this baby would be the thing that finally made him choose her. She spent Saturday preparing. She bought tiny baby shoes, the smallest ones she could find, soft white leather with little laces. She'd present them to him, let the image sink in, help him understand that this wasn't theoretical anymore. They weren't just fighting for their relationship. They were fighting for their family. Preston's flight landed at 4 p.m. He texted her from the airport, home by 6. We need to talk. Those 4 words sent ice through her veins. We need to talk was never followed by good news. Kamari arrived at his penthouse at 6:15, the baby shoes wrapped in tissue paper in a gift bag. She used her key, wondering with a sick feeling if this might be the last time. She heard his voice before she saw him. He was on the phone, pacing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, his posture tense. I understand, Father. Yes, I'll handle it. He hung up and turned, his face a mask of something Kamari couldn't quite read. Guilt? Regret? Resignation? Kamari. We need to talk. She set down the gift bag, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Preston, I need to tell you something first. No, please. Let me say this before I lose my nerve. And Kamari knew, before he spoke another word, that everything was about to fall apart. Preston's hands trembled as he poured himself scotch. It was barely past 6 in the evening, but he drank it like medicine, fast, desperate, necessary. My parents have made their position clear, he began, still facing the windows. I spent 3 days in Tokyo with my father and his attorneys. They've outlined exactly what happens if I continue this relationship. Preston, look at me. He turned, and Kamari saw a stranger. The man who'd laughed when she spilled champagne on his shoes was gone. In his place stood someone hollow, defeated, already mourning something he'd chosen to kill. I lose everything. The company position, my trust fund, my inheritance. They'll write me out of the will completely. I'll have nothing. You'll have me. Kamari, you don't understand what nothing means to people like us. I've never worked a real job, never had to budget or struggle or worry about rent. I don't know how to be poor. So you're choosing money over me, over us. I'm choosing reality over fantasy. His voice rose, echoing off the expensive walls. What kind of life could I give you? What kind of future? My father made it clear. If I stay with you, he'll destroy your family too. Your father's business, your mother's reputation at the school, everything. They have the power to do it, and they will. Kamari felt her knees weaken. She moved to the couch, sitting down before she fell down. So that's it? 6 months together and you're just done? Preston sat across from her, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I thought I was strong enough. I thought love would be enough. But they've backed me into a corner, and I don't see a way out that doesn't hurt everyone. There is a way out. You stand up to them. You choose me. And then what? We struggle in some one-bedroom apartment while they systematically destroy your father's life's work. while they blacklist you from every career opportunity in Atlanta. I can't do that to you. I won't. That's not your decision to make. Kamari's voice cracked. You don't get to martyr yourself and pretend you're protecting me. If you want to leave, if you're too weak to fight for us, then say that. But don't you dare pretend this is for my benefit. The silence that followed felt like death. Then Kamari remembered the gift bag, the baby shoes, the news that might change everything. Preston, there's something you need to know. She reached for the bag, hands shaking. Something that changes everything. There's nothing that can change this, Kamari. I've made my decision. I'm pregnant. The words dropped like stones in still water, sending ripples through the room. Preston's face went white. He stood up, then sat back down, then stood again. That's not possible. You're on birth control. Birth control isn't perfect. Nothing is. Kamari pulled the baby shoes from the bag, holding them up. I took 3 tests. They all say the same thing. We're having a baby, Preston. She watched emotions flash across his face. Shock, fear, something that might have been joy, then more fear. He walked to the window, then back to her, then to the bar to pour another drink. How far along? I don't know exactly. Maybe 6 weeks? I have an appointment next week to confirm. Next week? He laughed, a bitter sound. My parents gave me until tomorrow to end this. And now you're telling me you're pregnant? I just found out yesterday. I wanted to tell you in person, not over the phone while you were in Tokyo. Preston downed his scotch and poured another. This is a disaster. The word hit her like a slap. A disaster. We're talking about our child. We're talking about a complication that makes everything infinitely worse. He was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. Don't you see? This is exactly what my parents warned me about. They'll say you did this on purpose. They'll say you trapped me. I didn't trap you. I didn't want this any more than you did. Not like this. But you want to keep it. It wasn't a question. Kamari placed her hand over her stomach. Yes, I want to keep our baby. Our baby. Preston laughed again, that same horrible sound. Kamari, we're not ready for a baby. You're 19 years old, still in college. I'm 24 and completely dependent on my parents' money. How would we even afford? People figure it out. People who have way less than us make it work. People who have less than us? Preston turned on her. You mean people like you, from College Park? Working class people who scrape by and call it success? The contempt in his voice shocked her into silence. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I didn't mean that. This is too much. This is all too much. Preston. Kamari stood, moving toward him. I know this is scary. I'm terrified too. But we can do this. We love each other. We'll figure it out together. No. He backed away from her touch. No, we can't. Kamari, we have to take care of this. The air left the room. Take care of this? Her voice was barely a whisper. You mean? There are clinics, good ones, private ones. I'll pay for everything. The procedure, recovery, therapy if you need it. We can put this behind us and move forward. Move forward? Preston, this is our baby you're talking about. A baby we made together. It's a cluster of cells, he said, his voice taking on the cold, clinical tone she'd heard him use in business calls. It's not a baby yet. It's a problem with a solution. Kamari felt something inside her shatter. Not her heart, that had broken when he'd backed away from her touch. This was deeper. This was the death of the man she'd thought he was. I'm not having an abortion. Kamari, be reasonable. Reasonable? Her voice rose. You want me to be reasonable? You've just told me that our child, is a problem that needs to be solved. You've made it clear that your money and your parents' approval matter more than me, more than us, more than the life growing inside me. And you want me to be reasonable? What do you expect me to do? Preston shouted. Show up to my parents with this news. They'll destroy us both. They'll cut me off completely and make sure you never work anywhere in this city. Is that what you want? For our child to grow up in poverty because we were too stubborn to make a smart choice? A smart choice. Kamari's laugh was hollow. You mean a convenient choice. You mean the choice that lets you keep your penthouse and your trust fund and your precious family reputation. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Preston. But I'm not killing our baby so you can keep your lifestyle. He stared at her for a long moment, and she saw the exact second he made his final decision. His shoulders straightened. His jaw set. His eyes went cold. Then I can't help you. What? If you're going to keep it, I can't be involved. My parents will never accept it. This will ruin everything. Kamari felt the floor drop away. You're abandoning us. Your own child. I'm protecting myself. And honestly, Kamari, maybe I'm protecting you too. What kind of father would I be? I can't even stand up to my own parents. What kind of life could I give a child? A life with their father. That would be enough. No. Preston's voice was final. It wouldn't. I can't do this. I won't. Kamari grabbed her purse, the baby shoes falling forgotten to the floor. You're a coward. Maybe I am, but at least I'm honest about it. She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. I hope your money keeps you warm, Preston. I hope your parents' approval fills the hole where your spine should be. And I hope someday, when you're lying in your expensive bed in your empty penthouse, you remember this moment. You remember the day you chose billions over the only real thing you've ever had. Kamari. But she was already gone, the door slamming behind her with a finality that echoed through the penthouse like a gunshot. Sunday morning, Kamari woke up on Destiny's floor to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Preston's number, ranging from apologetic to defensive to angry. The last one simply read, "Someone will contact you tomorrow. Please cooperate." The someone turned out to be 3 people. At 9 a.m. Monday morning, there was a knock on the dorm room door. Kamari opened it to find a man in an expensive suit holding a leather briefcase. "Miss Kamari Johnson?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Gerald Thornton. I'm an attorney representing the Whitmore family. May I come in?" Everything in Kamari screamed to slam the door in his face. Instead, she stepped aside and let him enter, grateful that Destiny had left for class. Gerald Thornton had the kind of face that did this sort of thing often, delivering bad news in polite packages, destroying lies with contractual language. He sat at their tiny desk, like he was in a boardroom, pulling documents from his briefcase. "Miss Johnson, the Whitmore family has authorized me to make you an offer. I don't want their money. Please hear me out. This benefits everyone involved." He slid a document across the desk. "This is a non-disclosure agreement. In exchange for your signature, you'll receive $50,000. The agreement stipulates that you will not discuss your relationship with Preston Whitmore III with anyone. No media, no social media, no mutual acquaintances. You will not pursue paternity claims or child support. You will, essentially, disappear from the Whitmore family's life." Kamari stared at the document like it was written in poison. "They're paying me to disappear. They're offering you an opportunity to move forward with your life. What if I refuse?" Gerald's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then things become considerably more difficult for everyone. The Whitmore family has significant resources and is prepared to use them. Legal battles over custody can be lengthy and expensive. And there's still the matter of your father's business. You're threatening me. I'm explaining your options." He pulled out a check, already filled out. $50,000. Kamari's name on the payee line. "This money could help you finish school, relocate if you'd like, provide for your child. All we ask is your discretion. And if I want Preston to be involved in his child's life, Mr. Whitmore has made his position clear. He's not interested in parental involvement. This offer includes a formal termination of parental rights, pending the child's birth." The clinical way he discussed erasing Preston from their baby's life made Kamari's stomach turn. "I need to think about it." "Of course, you have until—" The knock on the door interrupted him. Kamari opened it to find Margaret Whitmore standing in the hallway, looking like a designer snake in Chanel and pearls. "Mrs. Whitmore, may I come in? I believe we have things to discuss." Gerald stood. "Mrs. Whitmore, I was handling this, and now I'm here to finish it." She swept into the room, her eyes scanning their cramped quarters with barely concealed disgust. My goodness. And I thought Preston's descriptions were exaggerated. What do you want? Kamari asked. To speak plainly, since legal jargon seems to be confusing you, Margaret sat delicately on Destiny's desk chair. You're pregnant with my son's child. Allegedly. There's no allegedly. The baby is Preston's. Will require a paternity test to confirm. But assuming you're telling the truth, here's what happens next. You'll sign the NDA and take the money. You'll leave Atlanta, perhaps return to your hometown or move somewhere no one knows the Whitmore name. You'll have your baby quietly, and you'll never contact my son again. And if I refuse? Margaret's smile was ice. Then I'll make it my personal mission to destroy everything you hold dear. Your father's business will collapse within 6 months. I've already had my. People review his tax returns, and there are several irregularities. Your mother will lose her teaching position. One call to the superintendent about unprofessional conduct should do it. Your college career will end. Emory receives significant donations from Whitmore Industries. And I'm sure the board would be interested to know about your attempts to trap my son. I didn't trap anyone. But that's what people will think when I'm done. You'll be the cautionary tale mothers tell their daughters. The girl who thought she could sleep her way into money and ended up with nothing. Kamari's hands clenched into fists. You're evil. I'm a mother protecting her son from a mistake. Margaret stood, smoothing her skirt. That's what this is, dear. A mistake. A regrettable mistake that you're choosing to compound by keeping this pregnancy. Preston has already moved on. He's actually having dinner with a lovely young woman this evening, Senator Hartley's daughter, Pemberley. They went to prep school together. The information hit like a punch. It had been less than 48 hours since their breakup, and Preston was already having dinner with someone else. I see that hurts, Margaret said with false sympathy. But surely you knew this was temporary. Men like Preston don't end up with girls like you. They have fun with you, they enjoy the novelty, but they marry within their class. It's simply how the world works. Your world, maybe. Not mine. Your world? Margaret laughed. Darling, you're about to be a 20-year-old single mother with no degree, no job prospects, and a baby you can't afford. Your world is about to become very small and very difficult, unless you take our offer. Gerald placed the NDA and check on the desk. All you have to do is sign. Kamari looked at the check. $50,000. More money than she'd ever seen. Enough to maybe, possibly, give her baby a chance. But it came with a price. Her voice, her truth, her dignity. No. The word came out stronger than she felt. I'm not signing anything. I'm not taking your money. And I'm not disappearing. Margaret's expression hardened. You're making a terrible mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Kamari walked to the door, opening it. Get out. Both of you. You'll regret this, Margaret said, gathering her purse. When you're working 3 jobs and living in some roach-infested apartment, when your child asks why they don't have a father, when you realize that pride doesn't pay bills, you'll regret this. If I do, at least I'll have my self-respect. What will you have? A son who's too weak to make his own choices and a grandchild you'll never know. After they left, Kamari tore the check into tiny pieces and let them fall like snow into the trash can. Then she sat on her dorm room floor and cried until she had nothing left. Her phone buzzed. A text from Preston. Please tell me you signed the papers. She blocked his number without responding. Telling her parents was worse than Preston's betrayal. At least with Preston, she'd half expected the cowardice. But her parents were supposed to love her unconditionally. That's what parents did. That's what she'd thought parents did. Tuesday evening, Kamari drove to College Park in the car she'd have to sell within. The month, she couldn't afford the insurance payments without her parents' help. The house she'd grown up in looked smaller somehow, less like home and more like a museum of a life she'd never get back. Her mother answered the door, took one look at Kamari's face, and knew. Marcus. She called. Kamari's here. Her father emerged from the living room, still in his work clothes, Bible in hand. He'd been preparing for Wednesday night service. They sat in the formal living room, The one with the plastic-covered furniture that was only used for important occasions. Births, deaths, revelations that would change everything. "I'm pregnant," Kamari said, because there was no gentle way to deliver devastation. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. Her father's face turned to stone. "Who?" Marcus Johnson's voice was quiet, deadly. "Preston. Preston Whitmore. The white boy." Not a question, an accusation. "Yes. And where is he?" "Waiting in the car to ask my permission to marry you." Kamari's silence answered. Her father stood, the Bible clutched so tight his knuckles went white. "You've committed fornication, laid down with a man who wasn't your husband, brought shame on this family and on the Lord." "Daddy, please." "Don't daddy me." His voice boomed. "Preach aloud. I raised you in the church. I taught you scripture. I gave you every opportunity to walk the righteous path, and you threw it all away for some rich white boy who won't even claim his child." "Marcus," her mother tried. "She's our daughter. She was our daughter. This person, this fornicator who stands before us, I don't recognize her." Kamari felt tears streaming down her face. "I made a mistake. I fell in love with the wrong person. But this baby didn't do anything wrong. This is your grandchild." "No." Her father's voice was final. "That baby is a consequence, a mark of sin, and I will not have it in my house. You're throwing me out." Kamari's voice broke. "Your own daughter?" "My daughter would have respected herself and her God. You have 1 week to figure out your next steps. If you choose to keep this baby, you're not welcome here." Her mother was crying now, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. But she didn't speak up, didn't defend, didn't fight for her daughter. "Mama," Kamari pleaded. Loretta Johnson looked at her husband, then at her daughter, caught between loyalty to both. "Your father is the head of this household," she whispered. "We have to follow his guidance. His guidance is to abandon me when I need you most." "His guidance," Marcus interjected, "is to maintain the sanctity of this home. I'm a deacon, Kamari. I counsel young people about the consequences of sin. How can I stand before the congregation if my own daughter is living in open rebellion against God's word? So your reputation matters more than your daughter." "This isn't about reputation. It's about righteousness." But Kamari saw the truth in his eyes. It was absolutely about reputation, about what the church ladies would whisper, about the looks from other deacons, about maintaining the perfect Christian family image. "You have 1 week," he repeated. "I suggest you use it wisely." That week crawled by like torture. Kamari went through the motions, attending classes she couldn't concentrate in, working library shifts where she checked out books through tears, lying on Destiny's floor while her roommate tried to figure out how to help. Sunday came, her last Sunday as a member of Greater Hope Baptist Church. She went because some part of her hoped her father would soften, hoped that seeing her in the pews, visibly pregnant now if you knew where to look, would remind him that she was still his daughter. The whispers started the moment she walked in. Someone had talked, maybe her mother, unable to keep the secret, maybe her father, needing to explain why his daughter wouldn't be around anymore. It didn't matter. The damage was done. Women who'd known her since birth looked away. Men who'd watched her grow up shook their heads in disgust. Teenagers whispered and pointed. One mother actually covered her daughter's eyes, as if Kamari's presence might contaminate her. The sermon was about sexual purity, about young women who threw away their virtue for temporary pleasure, about consequences and redemption, though it was clear from her father's pointed looks that redemption required admitting fault and begging forgiveness. Kamari walked out halfway through. Her mother found her in the parking lot. "Kamari." "Wait." "For what, Mama?" "For Daddy to publicly shame me some more. I got the message. I'm an embarrassment." Loretta pressed an envelope into her daughter's hand. "I've been saving this. It's not much, but it's something." Inside was $800 and a note. "I'm praying for you both. I'm sorry I'm not stronger." "Mama, why can't you stand up to him?" Kamari asked through tears. "Because I made vows 30 years ago, for better or worse. In a marriage, someone has to bend, and it's always been me. And what about your vows to me, to protect me, to love me? Her mother's face crumpled. I do love you. I love you so much it's killing me. But I can't lose your father. I won't survive it. But I'm supposed to survive losing both of you. Loretta had no answer. She just hugged her daughter one last time and walked back into the church, leaving Kamari alone in the parking lot with $800 and a future she couldn't see past. By the following Saturday, Kamari had packed 19 years of life into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Her childhood bedroom, the pink walls she'd begged for at age 7, the posters of colleges she'd dreamed of attending, the debate trophies and academic awards, all of it stayed behind, preserved like a memorial to a daughter who'd died. Her father didn't say goodbye. He was conveniently at a deacon's meeting when she came to collect her things. Her mother helped her pack, crying silently the entire time. "Take your winter coat," she said, "and these blankets. And, oh honey, do you have vitamins? The baby needs vitamins. Mama, if you care, why aren't you fighting for me?" Loretta sat on the bed that Kamari would never sleep in again. "Because I'm weak, because I'm afraid, because I've spent 30 years making myself small to keep peace. I don't know how to be big now." Kamari knelt in front of her mother. "Then learn, before you lose me forever." But they both knew it was already too late. Destiny picked her up in her car, loading the suitcases into the trunk. As they pulled away, Kamari looked back at the house one last time. Her mother stood in the doorway, one hand raised in goodbye or maybe surrender. Her father didn't appear. "Where to?" Destiny asked gently. "I don't know," Kamari whispered, one hand on her belly, protecting the life that had cost her everything else. "I don't know. You know, some of you watching this might have experienced family rejection. Maybe not for pregnancy, but for other choices. Who you loved, what career you chose, what dreams you followed. If you've ever felt that pain, that confusion of being punished by the people who are supposed to love you most, drop a comment below. Share your story. Because one thing Kamari learned through all of this is that shared pain becomes bearable pain. And if this story is touching your heart, if you're feeling these emotions, right alongside Kamari, hit that like button and share this video. Someone in your life needs to hear that survival is possible, that being abandoned doesn't mean being defeated. Subscribe to Mr. Roman's Story Vault if you haven't already, because Kamari's story is far from over. The darkest night comes just before dawn, and you need to see what she built from these ashes. But I'm warning you, what comes next will test every assumption you have about strength, about motherhood, and about what it really means to rise from nothing. The Starlight Diner on Ponce de Leon Avenue never closed. It couldn't afford to. Its customers were the forgotten people of Atlanta, third-shift workers, insomniacs, the recently heartbroken, and those who had nowhere else to go. Kamari became one of them just weeks after being thrown out of her parents' house. She'd been living in Destiny's dorm room for 2 weeks, sleeping on the floor, showering at the campus gym, pretending she still belonged at Emory. But the semester was ending, and Destiny's parents were flying in for move-out day. There was no way to explain the extra person and her suitcases. "I found you a job," Destiny had said one morning, handing Kamari a sticky note with an address. "My cousin works there. They're hiring. The manager's name is Gladys." The Starlight Diner looked exactly like its customers, worn down but still standing. The vinyl booths had duct tape covering the tiers. The linoleum floor had yellowed with age. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint, and the pie came from a restaurant supply warehouse, not anyone's grandmother. But it was open, and it was hiring. Gladys Miller was 57 years old, with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, skin the color of Georgia clay, and eyes that had seen everything twice. She looked Kamari up and down when she walked in at 2 in the afternoon, clearly assessing more than just her work experience. "You ever waitressed before?" "No, ma'am." "You good with difficult people?" "I've survived worse than difficult." Gladys's eyes narrowed. "How far along are you?" Kamari's hand instinctively went to her stomach. At 10 weeks, she wasn't showing yet, but somehow this woman knew. "How did you—" "Honey, I've had 4 babies. I know the look. The exhaustion, the way you're standing like your back already hurts. The fact that you walked past the coffee pot without even glancing at it. Gladys wiped down the counter. The question is, can you work on your feet for 8 hours while growing a human? I can do whatever I have to do. That's the right answer. Gladys pulled an application from under the register. Night shift pays better. Tips are bigger because people who eat at diners at 3 a.m. are either generous or too drunk to do math. You start tomorrow. Wear comfortable shoes and don't expect sympathy from the customers. Kamari's first night was a disaster. She mixed up orders, spilled coffee on a trucker who screamed at her for 10 minutes, dropped an entire tray of dishes, and cried in the walk-in freezer during her break. By 4 a.m., her feet had swollen so much she could barely walk, and the smell of frying bacon made her so nauseous she had to keep running to the bathroom. She found Gladys restocking napkins at 5 a.m., preparing for the breakfast rush. "I'm not good at this," Kamari admitted. "You should probably fire me. Sit down before you fall down." Gladys pointed to a booth. "You eat anything today?" "I'm not hungry." That wasn't the question. Gladys disappeared into the kitchen and returned with eggs, toast, and ginger ale. "Eat. The baby needs it even if you don't want it." Kamari picked at the eggs. "Why are you being nice to me?" Gladys sat across from her, her own cup of coffee steaming between them. "You want the truth? Please. Because 23 years ago, I was you. Pregnant, abandoned, broke, and working this exact shift at this exact diner. My baby's father was a jazz musician. Lord, that man was beautiful. He had dreams bigger than Georgia and promises sweeter than peach cobbler. Got me pregnant and disappeared to New York before I even started showing. What did you do? What you're doing? Survived. One day, one shift, one tip at a time." Gladys reached across the table, squeezing Kamari's hand. "My mama kicked me out too. Said I'd shamed the family. I slept in my car for 2 months before I saved enough for a room at a boarding house. Had my daughter in Grady Hospital with nobody there but a nurse who held my hand. Where's your daughter now?" "She's a pediatrician in Houston. Married, 2 kids, beautiful life." Gladys smiled, genuine and proud. She doesn't remember the hard years. She just knows her mama loved her enough to work 3 jobs and never let her see me cry. Did it get easier? Easier? No. But you get stronger. The load doesn't get lighter. You just learn to carry it better. Over the next months, Gladys became the mother Kamari had lost. She taught her how to carry 3 plates at once, how to diffuse angry drunks. With humor, how to maximize tips by remembering regulars' orders. She covered Kamari's shifts when morning sickness hit too hard. She brought prenatal vitamins from her daughter the doctor. She even helped Kamari find a weekly rate motel that was relatively clean and only moderately depressing. "Room 12 has the best water pressure," Gladys advised. "And the manager, Eddie, he's decent. Tell him I sent you." The motel became home. 1 room, a hot plate, a bathroom that sometimes had hot water, and a bed that sagged in the middle. Kamari paid $200 a week, money that disappeared from her paycheck before she even cashed it. What remained went to food, bus fare, and slowly building a savings account for when the baby came. She'd requested a leave of absence from Emory officially in April. There was no point pretending she could afford another semester. Her partial scholarship didn't cover living expenses, and without her parents' support, school was impossible. She'd written a letter to her academic advisor, professional and brief, requesting a leave of absence. She didn't mention the pregnancy or the homelessness. Just unforeseen family circumstances. The diner became her world. Night shift meant 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. Kamari learned to sleep during the day, with blackout curtains from the dollar store. She learned which customers tipped well and which ones grabbed at her growing belly without permission. She leaned at the world looked different at 3 a.m., raw, more honest, stripped of pretense. One night in June, a businessman came in. Expensive suit, Rolex watch, the kind of wealth that Preston had worn casually. He ordered pie and coffee, sat in Kamari's section for 2 hours working on his laptop. When he left, he handed her a tip in cash. Kamari glanced at it, expecting maybe $20. It was 5 $100 bills. She ran after him into the parking lot. Sir, this is too much. You left $500. He turned, his expression kind. I know what I left. But I can't accept this. You're what, 5 months pregnant? Working night shift at a diner? He smiled sadly. My daughter was you once. Pregnant, alone, struggling. A stranger helped her when she needed it most. Let me pay it forward. I don't know what to say. Say you'll put it towards something that matters. Diapers, doctor visits, whatever you need. He got into his Mercedes. And say you'll help someone else when you're able. That's how we survive. By lifting each other. Kamari stood in that parking lot, $500 clutched in her shaking hands, and cried. Not from sadness this time. From the shocking realization that kindness still existed, that strangers could be kinder than family, that maybe, just maybe, she and her baby would be okay. Gladys found her there 10 minutes later. You good, honey? A customer just gave me $500. A stranger. Just gave it to me. Gladys pulled her into a hug. The universe provides, baby girl. Not always when we want it, and not always how we expect it. But it provides. That money went into Kamari's savings, her emergency fund for when the baby came. Combined with what she'd been hoarding from tips, she had almost $3,000. Not enough for long-term security, but enough to maybe survive the first few months of motherhood. At night, while the diner hummed with lost souls and late-night cravings, Kamari would rest her hand on her growing belly and whisper promises. We're going to make it. I don't know how yet, but we're going to make it. And slowly, impossibly, she started to believe it. Kamari met Jabari Williams on a sweltering summer afternoon at the Southside Community Health Clinic. She'd been avoiding prenatal care because doctors cost money she didn't have. But at 18 weeks pregnant, the baby had started moving. Little flutters. That felt like butterflies. And fear finally outweighed pride. She needed to make sure everything was okay. The free clinic operated out of a converted church, staffed by volunteer doctors and medical students from Emory and Morehouse. The waiting room was packed with people who shared Kamari's circumstances. The uninsured, the working poor, those who'd fallen through society's cracks. She'd been waiting for 2 hours when a young black man in scrubs called her name. Kamari Johnson. He was maybe 26, 27, with deep brown skin, kind, eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a stethoscope around his neck. His name tag read Jabari Williams, medical student. That's me. He led her to a small exam room. I'm a third-year med student doing my OB rotation. Dr. Patterson will be in to see you, but I'll do your initial assessment if that's okay. That's fine. Jabari reviewed her chart, what little of it existed. This says it's your first prenatal visit. You're 18 weeks? About that. I haven't been able to afford. She stopped, hating how the word sounded. Hating admitting poverty to a stranger. No judgment here, he said gently. A lot of our patients are in similar situations. Let's just make sure you and baby are healthy, okay? He was professional but warm. He explained everything before he did it. Taking her blood pressure, listening to the baby's heartbeat, measuring her belly. When the Doppler picked up the rapid thump-thump-thump of her baby's heart, tears rolled down Kamari's face. That's my baby. That's your baby. Strong heartbeat. Sounds perfect. Dr. Patterson came in afterward, an older woman with grey hair and gentle hands. She confirmed what Jabari had found. Everything looked good. Kamari was healthy. The baby was healthy. But she needed to start taking prenatal vitamins and come back for regular checkups. The vitamins are expensive, Kamari said quietly. How much? The clinic provides them free, Dr. Patterson assured her. And we have a food pantry if you need additional support. Being pregnant takes a lot of calories. After the appointment, Kamari stopped by the clinic's resource center. They loaded her up with vitamins, pamphlets about nutrition and labor, and a bag of non-perishable groceries. She was walking out when Jabari caught up with her. Hey, Kamari. You mentioned you work nights? Yeah. At Starlight Diner on Ponce. I thought so. I've seen you there. I study there sometimes after late shifts at the hospital. He held out a bottle. These are prescription-grade prenatal vitamins. Better absorption than the standard ones. My attending physician gets samples from pharmaceutical reps. We're not supposed to take them home, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's healthcare. He pressed the bottle into her hands. Your baby needs these. Please. Something in his eyes made her accept. Not pity, just genuine human kindness. Thank you. You're welcome. 2 weeks later, Kamari was refilling coffee at the diner when someone sat at her counter. Jabari, we have to stop meeting like this, he joked. People will talk. Despite herself, Kamari smiled. What are you doing here at 2 a.m? Studying. I have boards coming up, and my apartment is too quiet. The diner has good energy. He opened a massive textbook. Plus, the coffee helps. That coffee could wake the dead. Exactly what I need. It became a routine. 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, Jabari would come to the diner around midnight and study until his shift started at the hospital at 6 a.m. He'd order coffee, pie, sometimes eggs. He'd leave generous tips that Kamari suspected were more about helping her than rewarding service. But more than that, he'd talk to her. During slow periods, when the diner was empty except for a sleeping trucker in booth 6, Jabari would quiz Kamari about her life. What had she studied at Emory? Business administration. What were her dreams? Starting her own consulting firm someday. What made her happy? The baby's kicks, Gladys's stories, the rare moments when she felt strong instead of scared. He told her about himself, too. He'd grown up in Decatur, son of 2 teachers. He'd gone to Morehouse on scholarship, then stayed for medical school. He wanted to be an OB-GYN because he'd watched his mother lose 3 pregnancies and knew how vulnerable women were during pregnancy. Every woman deserves compassionate care, he said one night. Regardless of insurance, relationship status, any of it, pregnancy is hard enough without judgment. Is that why you're nice to me? Because you feel sorry for me? Jabari looked up from his textbook. I'm nice to you because you're working full-time while growing a human being and still somehow manage to smile at drunk customers at 3 a.m. That takes strength most people don't have. In August, at 26 weeks pregnant, Kamari's back pain became unbearable. She was carrying a tray to a table when her legs nearly gave out. Jabari was there in an instant. Sit down. Now. I'm working. Gladys, he called. I'm stealing your waitress for 15 minutes. Gladys waved them off. Take 30. We're slow. Jabari led Kamari to a back booth and lifted her swollen feet onto the seat. You need compression socks. And you need to sit more. I need to work more. Tips don't happen when I'm sitting. Tips don't happen when you collapse either. He pulled out his phone. I'm ordering you compression socks. Don't argue. Jabari, you can't keep giving me things. Why not? I have a medical student stipend I barely use. I live with 2 roommates and eat hospital cafeteria food. Let me help. Why do you care so much? He was quiet for a moment. You really want to know? Yes, because you remind me that good people exist. You could have taken the easy way out, accepted that family's money, had an abortion, pretended none of this happened. But you chose the harder path because it was the right path. That's rare. That's worth supporting. The compression socks arrived 2 days later. They helped. September brought cooler weather and a growing belly that made everything harder. Kamari was in her 3rd trimester now, exhausted constantly, her body no longer entirely her own. The baby kicked constantly, especially during night shift, like it knew it was supposed to be sleeping but refused. One night, during a rare moment of quiet, Kamari was leaning against the counter, hand on her belly, when Jabari looked up from his studying. Can I? He hesitated. Can I feel the baby kick? You don't have to say yes. I've delivered 17 babies in my rotation, but I've never felt one move from the outside. Kamari should have said no. should have maintained boundaries. But Jabari had been nothing but kind, nothing but respectful. Okay. He came around the counter, and she guided his hand to where the baby was most active. They stood there, waiting. Then it happened, a strong kick right against his palm. Jabari's face transformed. Wonder, joy, something almost like reverence crossed his features. Oh my God. That's incredible. That's been my entire existence for the past month. It's a strong kick. You're growing an athlete in there. The baby kicked again, as if showing off. Jabari looked at Kamari, his hand still on her belly, and something shifted between them. Not romantic, not yet, but a connection deeper than friendship, a recognition that they were witnessing something sacred together. Thank you, he said quietly, for letting me be part of this. Thank you for caring when you didn't have to. From that night forward, Jabari wasn't just the kind medical student who studied at her diner. He was family, the chosen kind, the kind that mattered more. It was a cold night in mid-November. Kamari was wiping down tables when her water broke. For a second, she just stood there, looking at the puddle on the diner floor, her mind refusing to process what was happening. Gladys? One look and Gladys was in motion. Eddie, call 911. Kamari, honey, sit down. How far apart are the contractions? I didn't think they were contractions. My back's been hurting all night, but it always hurts. Oh, baby. You've been in labor for hours and didn't even know it. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. Gladys rode with her to Grady Hospital, holding her hand while contractions came faster and harder. I'm scared, Kamari whispered. I know, honey, but you've survived everything else. You'll survive this too. Labor was hell. There was no other word for it. 18 hours of pain that rewrote Kamari's understanding of suffering. The contractions felt like her body was being torn apart from the inside. She screamed, cried, begged for drugs they couldn't give her, because it was too late. Gladys stayed as long as she could, but had to leave for her shift. I'll be back as soon as I can, baby. Kamari labored alone for 2 hours. Nurses came and went, professional but distant. This was Grady Hospital. They delivered hundreds of babies, most to women like Kamari. She wasn't special. She was just another single mother, another statistic. Then Jabari walked in. What are you have your boards today. I rescheduled. He took the chair beside her bed, taking her hand. You think I'm missing this? You can't fail your exams because of me. Another contraction hit, cutting off her protest. Jabari held her hand through it, coaching her breathing, wiping sweat from her forehead. You're not doing this alone, he said when the contraction passed. I'm here. I'm not leaving. He stayed through every contraction, every scream, every moment when Kamari was convinced she couldn't survive this, couldn't bring a child into a world where she had nothing to offer. You can do this, Jabari repeated like a prayer. You're the strongest person I know. You can do this. After 18 hours of labor, just before 10 p.m., Hope Amara Johnson entered the world screaming. The sound was the most beautiful thing Kamari had ever heard. It's a girl, the doctor announced, placing the baby on Kamari's chest. A healthy baby girl. Kamari looked down at her daughter, covered in vernix, face scrunched, furious at being removed from her warm home, and felt her entire world reorganize itself. This was why. This was what she'd fought for, sacrificed for, survived for. Hi, baby girl, Kamari whispered through tears. I'm your mama. I've got you. I'll always have you. Hope stopped crying at the sound of her mother's voice, her tiny eyes trying to focus. Jabari stood back, giving them their moment, but his face was wet with tears. Later, after the nurses had cleaned Hope and brought her back, after Kamari had attempted breastfeeding and succeeded in feeling completely inadequate at it, after the adrenaline had worn off and left only exhaustion, Jabari pulled a notebook from his bag. I wrote something for you. For when you're ready. Inside was a letter, handwritten. Dear Hope, you don't know me yet. I'm Jabari, the guy who got to watch your mama become a superhero. I want you to know something about her. So when you're old enough to understand, you'll know what kind of woman raised you. Your mama is the strongest person I've ever met. When everyone else gave up on her, she never gave up on you. She worked 18-hour shifts on swollen feet. She lived in a room that wasn't fit for anyone. She survived on 1 meal a day so she could save money for your diapers. She could have taken the easy way out 100 times, but she chose you. Every single day, she chose you. You're going to have an amazing life because your mama won't accept anything less. And if she'll let me, I'd like to be around to watch. Welcome to the world, little one. It's better because you're in it. Jabari. Kamari finished reading through tears. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He looked at Hope, sleeping in Kamari's arms. She's perfect. What's her name? Hope. Hope Amara Johnson. Hope. Why? Hope. Because that's what she gave me when I had nothing else. Hope that tomorrow could be better. Hope that love could exist without conditions. Hope that I was stronger than my circumstances. It's perfect. That night, alone in her hospital room with her daughter sleeping in a bassinet, beside her bed, Kamari did something she'd been avoiding for 8 months. She wrote to Preston. The letter was simple. Preston, on November 14th at 9:47 p.m., you became a father. Her name is Hope Amara Johnson. She weighs 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She has your nose and my eyes. She's perfect. I'm not writing to ask you for anything. You made your choice clear. I'm writing because someday Hope might ask about you, and I want to be able to tell her that I tried, that I gave you the chance to know her. If you want to meet her, my number hasn't changed. If you don't, I understand. She'll be loved regardless. She'll be wanted regardless. She'll have everything she needs because I'll make sure of it. But you should know, you're missing out on something extraordinary. Kamari. She mailed it the next morning to the Whitmore Industries office address. Preston never responded. Years later, Kamari would realize that silence was its own kind of answer. That some people are so broken by their own cowardice that they can't face what they've lost until it's too late to get it back. But in that hospital room, holding her newborn daughter, with Jabari asleep in the uncomfortable chair, beside them and Gladys on her way back with balloons, Kamari felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. She'd survived the unsurvivable. She'd created life despite everyone telling her it would destroy hers. She'd found family in strangers and strength in suffering. Hope stirred, making the tiny mewling sounds newborns make. Kamari picked her up, inhaling that intoxicating newborn smell. We're going to be okay, she whispered. More than okay. We're going to be extraordinary. And though she couldn't see it yet, couldn't know the empire she'd build or the lives, she'd change. Kamari Johnson was already becoming the woman she was meant to be. One breath, one day, one choice at a time. The first year of Hope's life, Kamari learned that motherhood was simultaneously the hardest and most rewarding thing she'd ever done. Those early months were a blur of 2 a.m. feedings, diaper changes that seemed never-ending, and an exhaustion so profound it felt like drowning. Kamari returned to work at the diner when Hope was just 3 weeks old, not because she wanted to, but because bills didn't pause for maternity leave. Gladys had found her crying in the break room that first night back. I left her at the motel with a neighbor. Kamari sobbed. Mrs. Chen from room 9. She has grandkids, so I thought she'd be safe. But what if something happens? What if Hope needs me and I'm here serving pie to strangers? Baby girl, every working mama has felt exactly what you're feeling right now. The guilt is part of it. But you're doing what you have to do to survive. It shouldn't be this hard. No, it shouldn't. But it is. So we figure it out. Figuring it out came in the form of the Southside Community Center. Jabari had mentioned it during one of his diner visits. They offered subsidized daycare for low-income mothers, operating on a sliding scale based on income. Kamari filled out the application when Hope was just a few weeks old, her hands shaking as she calculated her monthly earnings. After rent, utilities, and food, she had maybe $200 left over. The daycare would cost $150 a month, a fortune she didn't have, but cheaper than any alternative. She got accepted 2 months later. The daycare wasn't fancy. The toys were donated, the cribs were second-hand, and the building needed fresh paint. But the staff loved the children like they were their own. Ms. Patricia, who ran the infant room, had raised 6 kids herself and had patience that seemed infinite. "She'll be safe here," Miss Patricia promised on Hope's first day, taking the baby from Kamari's reluctant arms. "We'll love her good while you're working." It still broke Kamari's heart every single day to drop her daughter off. But slowly, impossibly, they found a rhythm. Food became the next battle. Kamari's paycheck covered rent and daycare, but not much else. She'd stand in the grocery store, calculator in hand, choosing between diapers and dinner. The choice was always diapers. Jabari noticed she'd gotten thinner. "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" he asked one night at the diner. "I eat." "Kamari, I'm fine." Hope eats. That's what matters. The next day, he showed up at her motel with groceries. Rice, beans, chicken, vegetables, baby food. "Before you get proud and refuse, this is from my church's food pantry. They have extra. I'm just the delivery guy." It was a lie. Kamari knew it was a lie. But her daughter needed to eat, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Thank you," she whispered. That same week, Jabari helped her apply for WIC, the Women, Infants and Children Nutrition Program. The application required documentation Kamari didn't have: pay stubs, proof of residency, medical records. Jabari helped her gather it all, sitting on the floor of her motel room while Hope napped, organizing papers into neat folders. "Why are you doing all this?" Kamari asked. "Because I care about you both." Is that allowed? Something had shifted between them over the months. What had started as kindness had deepened into something neither of them had named yet. Jabari came to the diner less to study and more to see them. He'd bring Hope tiny gifts, a rattle from the hospital gift shop, a onesie he'd found on sale. He'd hold her while Kamari ate during her breaks, bouncing her gently and making silly faces that made Hope giggle. "You're good with her," Kamari observed one night. "She's easy to love." He wasn't just talking about Hope. By the time Hope was 4 months old, with WIC providing formula and baby food, with the daycare giving Hope, safe care, with Gladys covering shifts when Hope got sick, Kamari started to breathe a little easier. That's when she started the blog. It began as therapy, a way to process everything she'd been through. Late at night, after Hope was asleep and before her shift started, Kamari would write. She wrote about Preston's betrayal, her parents' abandonment, the motel room that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. She wrote about Gladys and Jabari and the stranger who tipped her $500. She wrote about learning to be a mother while still figuring out how to be an adult. She called it Rebuilding Kamari and posted it on a free blogging platform, never expecting anyone to read it. But people did. Her first post, "What a Billionaire Taught Me About Poverty," got 50 views. Then 100. Then 1,000. Women, mostly women, started commenting, sharing their own stories of abandonment and survival. "This is my story too. Thank you for making me feel less alone. You're so brave for sharing this. My daughter's father left when I was 6 months pregnant. Reading this helps. Girl, you're going to make it. I was you 10 years ago. Now I own my own business. Keep going." Kamari wrote about the practical stuff too, how to stretch $20 at the grocery store, which resources existed for single mothers, how to maintain dignity when applying for government assistance. She wrote about the shame society placed on women like her and why that shame was misplaced. Her writing was raw, honest and unapologetic. She didn't sugarcoat the struggles or pretend everything was okay, but she also didn't wallow. Every post ended with the same line, "Tomorrow, we try again." By Hope's first birthday in November, the blog had 5,000 regular readers. Jabari had read every single post. "You're an incredible writer," he told her at Hope's birthday party, a small gathering, at the community center with Gladys, Miss Patricia, and a few other daycare moms. "Have you thought about doing something with this?" "Like what?" "It's just me venting into the void." "It's more than that. You're building a community, These women need what you're offering. Kamari looked at Hope, face covered in birthday cake, laughing as Jabari made balloon animals. Her daughter was healthy, happy, loved. They had a roof over their heads and food in the fridge. It wasn't much by most standards, but it was everything they'd fought for. Maybe, she said. But right now, I'm just trying to make it to next month's rent. You'll do more than survive, Jabari said quietly. I know you will. He had no idea how right he was. By the time Hope was 15 months old, walking and talking and getting into everything, life had shifted slightly. Kamari had been promoted to shift supervisor at the diner, which came with an extra $1 per hour. Not much, but enough to move them out of the motel and into a small one-bedroom apartment. It was in a rough neighborhood, and the apartment had roaches no matter how clean she kept it, but it was theirs. Hope had her own crib, instead of sleeping in a dresser drawer. They had a kitchen instead of a hot plate. They had a bathroom that didn't require quarters. Progress looked different when you'd started from nothing. Kamari's blog had grown to 15,000 followers. She'd started posting more regularly, twice a week instead of whenever she had time. Her posts covered everything from navigating public assistance programs, to dealing with judgmental relatives, to finding joy in poverty. One post, written at 4 a.m. after a particularly difficult shift, would change everything. She titled it, Millionaire Problems versus Real Problems. My ex-boyfriend's family is worth billions. I know this because I Googled them recently, in a moment of weakness and curiosity. They just bought a villa in Tuscany. The article said it cost $12 million. Do you know what I could do with $12 million? Actually, scratch that. Do you know what I could do with $12,100? With $1,200, I could pay rent for 6 months. I could buy my daughter new shoes. She's growing so fast her toes are cramped in. Her current ones, but new shoes cost $30, and that's grocery money. I could get my car fixed, so I don't have to take the bus in the rain, with a toddler and diaper bag, and pray we don't miss our stop. But his family needed a villa in Tuscany. I'm not writing this out of bitterness. I'm writing this because I want people to understand that problems look different depending on where you're standing. When you have billions, your problems are about which international property to buy. When you have nothing, your problems are about choosing between electricity and food. Rich people worry about legacy. Poor people worry about tomorrow. And you know what? I'll take my problems over theirs any day, because my problems made me stronger. My problems taught me what actually matters. My problems gave me a daughter who will grow up knowing her worth isn't tied to a bank account. I've learned more about resilience, community, and love in 2 years of poverty than I ever learned in 19 years of comfort. And while I wouldn't wish this struggle on anyone, I also wouldn't trade who it's made me. Tomorrow, we try again. And we'll be okay. Not because we have money, but because we have each other. The post went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been shared 50,000 times. News outlets picked it up. Morning talk shows mentioned it. Women's forums discussed it. And buried in the hundreds of comments and emails was one from an address Kamari almost deleted, info@stratumventures.com. Dear Ms. Johnson, my name is Rebecca Chen, partner at Stratum Ventures, a venture capital firm focused on social impact investing. I came across your blog post about economic disparity and spent the past 2 hours reading your entire archive. Your voice is powerful. Your insights into navigating poverty, single motherhood, and systematic inequality are exactly what our portfolio companies need to hear. We work with startups trying to serve underrepresented markets, but many of our founders come from privilege and don't understand the communities they're trying to reach. We're looking for a diversity and inclusion consultant to work with our portfolio companies. The position is full-time, salaried at $65,000 annually, with benefits. Based on your writing, I believe you'd be perfect for this role. Would you be interested in discussing this opportunity? Kamari read the email 3 times, convinced it was spam. No legitimate company offered jobs through blog comments. This had to be a scam. She showed it to Jabari that night. He'd basically moved into their apartment by now. Officially, he still had his place with roommates. But unofficially, he slept on Kamari's couch most nights. and had become Hope's favorite person. "It's real," he said, researching the company on his laptop. "Stratum Ventures is legitimate. They've funded some major companies. Kamari, this is real. They're offering $65,000 a year. I make $24,000 at the diner. This has to be a mistake. Or maybe they see what I see, that you're brilliant, insightful, and exactly what they need." Kamari's hands shook as she typed a response. Within an hour, Rebecca Chen had replied, setting up a phone interview for the following week. The next 7 days were consumed by preparation. Jabari helped her research the company, practice interview questions, and build a professional wardrobe from thrift stores. Gladys covered her shifts. Miss Patricia watched Hope during the interview. The phone call lasted 90 minutes. Rebecca asked about her background, her experiences, her insights into poverty and inequality. Kamari answered honestly, expecting each answer to disqualify her. Instead, Rebecca scheduled an in-person interview. "I need you to come to our office next week. Meet the team, present some ideas. Can you do that?" "Yes. Absolutely yes." The in-person interview was terrifying. Stratum Ventures' office was in a renovated warehouse in West Midtown. All exposed brick, modern furniture, and people in expensive casual clothes. Kamari wore her best thrift store blazer and prayed nobody noticed it was 2 sizes too big. She presented ideas about authentically reaching low-income communities, about the gap between what companies thought poor people needed and what they actually needed, about the importance of hiring people with lived experience instead of just good intentions. The partners listened, asked questions, challenged her assumptions. She pushed back, defending her positions with passion born from experience. 2 days later, Rebecca called. "We'd like to offer you the position." Kamari sat down on her apartment floor, Hope playing with blocks beside her, and cried. Her first paycheck arrived 3 weeks later. After taxes, it was $2,100, more money than she'd ever seen in 2 weeks of work. She took Jabari, Gladys, and Hope to dinner. Nothing fancy, just waffle, house, and bought everyone whatever they wanted without checking prices. "You did it," Gladys said, raising her sweet tea. "You actually did it." "We did it," Kamari corrected. "None of this happens without all of you." That night, she updated her blog. Miracles happen at 4am. Her readers celebrated with her, hundreds of comments from women who had been following her journey, who saw themselves in her struggle. But Kamari knew this wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. The job at Stratum Ventures was everything Kamari needed and nothing she expected. She threw herself into the work with the intensity of someone who knew what it meant to lose everything. She consulted with portfolio companies about their diversity initiatives, calling out performative nonsense and pushing for real change. She wasn't afraid to tell wealthy tech founders that their apps for helping the poor were insulting and out of touch. "Poor people don't need an app to budget better," she told one founder bluntly. "They need higher wages. They need affordable childcare. They need systems that don't punish them for being poor." Her directness made some people uncomfortable, but it made her invaluable. Within 6 months, she was promoted to senior consultant. Within a year, she was leading diversity initiatives across their entire portfolio. By the time Hope was 2.5, Kamari was making $95,000 a year and had been featured in Atlanta Business Chronicle. The raises meant stability. They moved to a better apartment, 2 bedrooms, no roaches, in a neighborhood with decent schools. Kamari bought a reliable car. She opened a savings account that actually had money in it. She took Hope to the pediatrician without worrying about the copay. But success came with its own complications. The corporate world wasn't designed for women who looked like her or came from where she'd come from. The microaggressions were constant. Colleagues touching her hair without permission, assuming she was. The assistant instead of the consultant, praising her for being articulate like it was surprising. One partner actually said to her face, "You're not like other black single mothers. You're so well-spoken." Kamari smiled professionally while imagining his downfall. She started documenting these experiences in her blog, which now had 100,000 followers. Her posts about navigating corporate America as a black woman from poverty resonated deeply. Women sent her messages daily, sharing their own stories, asking for advice. That's when the idea struck. Why was she building wealth for venture capitalists when she could build it for herself? Why was she consulting for other people's companies when she could start her own? When Hope turned 3, with Jabari officially her boyfriend, Dee stopped pretending he didn't live with them. Kamari took the leap. She started Authentic Voice Consulting, a firm dedicated to helping businesses genuinely connect with diverse, low-income communities. Her pitch was simple: hire people with lived experience, not just good intentions. She expected to struggle, expected to scrape by for years before seeing profit. Instead, her first client paid her $50,000 for a 3-month consultation. Then another, then another. By the end of that year, Authentic Voice had 7 employees and revenue exceeding $1 million. Kamari Johnson, who'd been homeless 3 years earlier, was a millionaire. The Forbes article came the following spring. 30 Under 30, Social Impact Edition featured Kamari's story. The pregnancy, the abandonment, the rise from poverty to success. The article was careful not to name Preston, but anyone who wanted to could figure it out. Whitmore Industries, billionaire family. It wasn't hard math. Kamari knew Preston would see it, knew his family would see it, knew they'd realize the girl they'd tried to erase had become someone they couldn't ignore. She didn't care. What mattered was the message she could now send to women like her. Survival was possible. Success was possible. You could be abandoned by everyone and still build something extraordinary. The morning the Forbes issue hit stands, Kamari sat at breakfast with Hope and Jabari in their comfortable 3-bedroom house. They'd bought it 6 months earlier, her name on the mortgage, her money for the down payment. "Mama, you're in a magazine," Hope said, pointing at the photo. "I am, baby girl." "Are you famous?" "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who didn't give up." Jabari squeezed her hand across the table. "You're more than that. You're proof that the people who count you out are always wrong." That afternoon, Kamari got an email from an address she hadn't seen in years. "Preston, before we continue with what happens next, I need you to really hear this. Kamari's success didn't happen because she was special. It happened because she refused to let other people's limitations define her possibilities. She was thrown away by a billionaire, abandoned by her family, left with nothing, and she built everything. How many times have you let someone else's rejection stop you? How many dreams have you buried because someone said you weren't good enough, weren't ready, weren't the right fit? If this story is lighting a fire in you, if you're feeling that spark of possibility, that maybe, just maybe, you could rise from your own ashes, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their current situation isn't their final destination. Drop a comment telling me what dream you're going to stop making excuses for and start fighting for. Subscribe to Mr. Roman's Story Vault if you haven't already, because Kamari's story isn't done. The confrontation with Preston is coming, the family redemption is coming, and the truth about what real wealth looks like is coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when the man who abandoned her realizes what he lost. 3 years after starting her company, the Atlanta Business Expo became Kamari's biggest speaking engagement yet. As a keynote speaker on resilience and authenticity in business, she stood before 2,000 entrepreneurs, business leaders, and investors, telling a version of her story she'd perfected over the years, honest about the struggle but focused on the lessons. She wore a custom-tailored navy suit that cost more than a month's rent at the motel she'd once called home. Her natural hair was styled in elegant locks that fell past her shoulders. She commanded the stage with the confidence of someone who'd earned every word she spoke. "Failure isn't falling down," she told the audience. "Failure is staying down. I was 19, pregnant, and abandoned by everyone I thought would support me. But I got up. Every single day I got up. And that's the only business strategy that truly matters. Showing up, especially when it's hard." The applause was thunderous. During the Q&A session, she scanned the crowd and froze. Preston Whitmore III sat in the 3rd row, older and somehow diminished. His sandy brown hair had started greying at the temples. The confidence he'd worn like armor had cracked, leaving something hollow behind. Their eyes met for half a second before Kamari looked away, refocusing on a question about startup funding. After her presentation, as she packed up her materials backstage, she heard his voice. Kamari. She'd practiced this moment, imagined it 1,000 times, but nothing prepared her for the reality of facing the man who'd broken her. Preston. He looked worse up close. His expensive suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes, the lines that spoke of regret and sleepless nights. You were incredible up there. Your company, your success. I've been following your journey. I'm proud of you. The audacity nearly made her laugh. You don't get to be proud of me. You get to regret losing me. There's a difference. I know. You're right. He ran his hand through his hair, that old nervous gesture. I read the Forbes article. I know about Hope. I know I have a daughter. You know you abandoned a daughter. Again, there's a difference. Can I meet her, please? I know I have no right to ask, but... No. The word was steel. Final. Kamari, please. I've changed. I'm divorced. Pemberley and I, it never worked. My parents and I barely speak. I've spent years realizing what I threw away. I want to make it right. Make it right? Kamari's voice rose. You can't make it right, Preston. You can't unabandon your child. You can't erase the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering how I'd feed her. You can't give back the moments you missed. Her first steps, her first words, her first day of school. Those are gone. You chose that. I was young. I was scared. You were a coward. Say it right. You weren't young. You were 24, a grown man. You weren't scared. You were selfish. You chose money and your parents' approval over your own child. Preston's face crumpled. You're right. You're absolutely right. I was a coward. I've regretted it every single day since. Good. Live with that regret, because Hope doesn't need you. She has Jabari, a man who chose us when he didn't have to. A man who shows up, who loves her, like she's his own, who proves every single day what real fatherhood looks like. You think showing up now, with your guilt and your excuses, means anything? I just want a chance. You had your chance. You had 100 chances. Every day for 5 years, you could have reached out, could have tried, could have fought for her. But you didn't. So no, you don't get to meet her. You don't get to disrupt her life because you're finally feeling guilty. I'm her father. Biologically, yes. In every way that matters. No. You're a stranger who shares her DNA. That's all. Silence hung between them, heavy with everything that could have been and never would be. Kamari softened slightly, not for him, but for herself. Preston, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying hatred is exhausting. I forgive you for abandoning me, for trying to pay me off, for being too weak to love me the way I deserved. I forgive you for missing out on the most incredible child I've ever known. Thank you, he whispered. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. It doesn't mean second chances. It means I'm letting go of what you did, so I can fully embrace what I built without you. She picked up her bag. I hope you find peace, Preston. I genuinely do. But you won't find it with us. She walked away, leaving him standing there with his regrets and his too-late realizations. And Kamari felt lighter than she had in years. Hope's 6th birthday party was held in the backyard of the house Kamari owned, a beautiful 4-bedroom in Decatur with a swing set and a garden. 20 children ran around in organized chaos while adults supervised from lawn chairs. Jabari was manning the grill, wearing an apron that said "World's Best Dad," a Father's Day gift from Hope. He'd been Daddy Jab for 3 years now, the only father Hope had ever known or needed. After the cake, after the presents, after most of the guests had left, Jabari gathered. Everyone who remained, Gladys, Miss Patricia, a few close friends, and Hope. I have one more present, he announced, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Kamari's breath caught. Jabari got down on one knee, but he wasn't looking at Kamari. He was looking at Hope. Hope Amara Johnson. You are the most incredible kid I've ever known. I've loved you since the day you were born, and I've loved being in your life every day since. So I have a question for you first. He opened the box, revealing a delicate silver bracelet with a small heart charm. Would you let me be your daddy? Officially, legally, forever? Hope's eyes went wide. Really? Like really, really? Really, really? If you want me to be... Yes. Hope threw herself at him. Yes, yes, yes. The gathering erupted in cheers and tears. Then Jabari turned to Kamari, pulling out a second box, this one with a ring that caught the sunset light. Kamari Johnson, I fell in love with you in a free clinic 6 years ago. I fell deeper in love watching you fight for your daughter, for your dreams, for the life you deserved. You're the strongest, most incredible woman I've ever known. And if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life showing you what real love looks like. Tears streamed down Kamari's face. Yes. 1,000 times yes. The ring fit perfectly, because Jabari had asked Hope's ring size months ago, planning this moment down to the smallest detail. 6 years ago, Kamari had stood in the rain outside the Whitmore mansion with nothing. Now she had everything that mattered, and none of it had come from Preston's billions. They got married 6 months later in Gladys's backyard. The wedding was small but perfect. String lights, soul food catered by the Starlight Diner, and a guest list of people who'd earned their place through presence, not obligation. Hope was the flower girl, taking her job so seriously she counted each petal she dropped. Halfway through the reception, Kamari saw a car pull up. Her mother emerged, then her father. She hadn't invited them, hadn't spoken to them in over 6 years. Loretta approached cautiously, Marcus hanging back. Kamari, baby, I know we don't deserve to be here, but I couldn't let today pass without telling you how sorry I am, how proud I am. Mama, no, let me finish. I was wrong. Your father was wrong. We let pride and fear make us cruel when we should have been loving. We abandoned you when you needed us most, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. Marcus stepped forward then, this man who'd called her a sinner and thrown her out. I was a fool. I hid behind scripture to justify my fear and my pride. I failed you as a father. I failed Hope as a grandfather. If you can find it in your heart to forgive us, I forgave you years ago. Kamari interrupted. Not because you asked, but because I needed to. But forgiveness and restoration aren't the same thing. I understand, her father said quietly. Kamari looked at Hope, laughing as Jabari spun her around the dance floor. But my daughter deserves to know her grandparents. If you're willing to be present, really present, without judgment or conditions, then maybe we can start over. Her mother sobbed, pulling Kamari into a hug. Thank you, baby girl, Grandma. Hope had appeared, curious and cautious. Yes, sweetheart, Loretta said through tears. I'm your grandma, and I've missed you so much. It wasn't perfect. Years of hurt couldn't be erased in one conversation, but it was a beginning. Later, as Jabari and Kamari had their first dance as husband and wife, she whispered, Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for letting me. 18 years after Hope's birth, Kamari sat in the front row of Hope's high school graduation, Jabari beside her. Her parents in the row behind with Hope's younger siblings, twins Marcus Jr. and Amara, now 10 years old. At 38, Kamari had built more than she'd ever dreamed possible. Authentic Voice Consulting had grown into a multi-million-dollar enterprise with offices in 3 cities. But more importantly, she'd started the Hope Foundation, a scholarship, fund and shelter for pregnant women abandoned by their families. Every year, the foundation provided full scholarships to 20 young mothers trying to finish their education. The shelter housed 30 women at a time, offering free childcare, job training, and the kind of support Kamari had desperately needed and barely found. We're not just giving handouts, she always said. We're giving hand-ups. There's a difference. Now, watching her daughter walk across the stage as valedictorian, Kamari felt the full weight of how far they'd come. Hope's speech began with gratitude to teachers and classmates, but then shifted. My story started differently than most of yours. I was born to a 20-year-old single mother who had nothing but determination. My biological father wanted nothing to do with me. My mother's family threw her out. By every statistical measure, I should have struggled. But I didn't, because my mother refused to let our circumstances define our future. Hope's eyes found Kamari in the crowd. Mom, you worked 3 jobs while going to night school. You built a company from nothing. You turned your pain into purpose, and your struggle into strength. You taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. You showed me that success isn't measured in money, but in lives touched and dreams realized. Kamari was openly crying now, and to my dad, Jabari Williams, the man who chose to love a child that wasn't biologically his. You showed me what real fatherhood looks like, not biology but choice, not obligation but love. After the ceremony, during the family celebration at their favorite restaurant, Hope pulled Kamari aside. Mom, I need to tell you something. I know about him, about Preston Whitmore. Kamari's heart stopped. How long have you known? Since I was 14. I found the Forbes article online, did the math. His picture was in your old college yearbook. Hope, I can explain. Mom, stop. I'm not angry. How could I be? His leaving led to everything we have. If he'd stayed, maybe you would have been trapped in his world, made small by his family's expectations. Maybe Dad wouldn't have come into our lives. Maybe you wouldn't have built the foundation that's helped hundreds of women. His abandonment wasn't a curse, it was a gift. Kamari pulled her daughter close. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best. That evening, back at home, Jabari raised his glass for a toast. The whole family was there. Gladys, now retired but still sharp as ever, Miss Patricia. Kamari's parents, fully restored to their lives, and friends who'd become family. To Hope, Jabari said, for being everything her name promises. To Hope, everyone echoed. But as Kamari looked around the table, at the family she'd built from ashes, at the daughter who'd given her purpose, at the man who'd shown her what real love looked like, at the parents who'd finally learned that love was more important than pride, she understood they weren't just toasting her daughter. They were toasting the concept itself, hope, the thing that had carried her through the darkest nights and into this brilliant life. Preston's billions couldn't buy what she had. His family name couldn't purchase the respect she'd earned. His privilege couldn't create the legacy she'd built. She'd become wealthy in all the ways that truly mattered, in love that was chosen, not obligated, in family that was built, not just born, in a life that had meaning beyond money. The 19-year-old girl who'd been abandoned and thrown out had become a woman who caught others when they fell. The pregnancy that was supposed to ruin her life had given her the motivation to build something extraordinary. And the love she'd thought she'd lost with Preston was nothing compared to what she'd found, not just with Jabari but with herself. Kamari had learned to write her own story, and it was more beautiful than any fairy tale. You've just witnessed something powerful. Kamari's story isn't just about surviving abandonment. It's about transforming it. It's about understanding that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the foundation for your greatest victory. Let me ask you something. What story are you telling yourself about your life right now? Are you the victim of your circumstances, or are you the author of your comeback? Because here's what Kamari's journey teaches us. Your worth isn't determined by who stays or who goes. It's determined by who you choose to become regardless. The people who abandon you make room for better people to arrive. And sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is leaving, because it forces you to discover strength you never knew you had. If this story moved you, if it challenged you, if it reminded you that your current chapter isn't your final chapter, I need you to do 3 things. First, smash that like button. Let the algorithm know that stories like this matter, that real talk about struggle and triumph matters. Second, subscribe to Mr. Roman's Story Vault if you haven't already. We're building a community of people who understand that life's hardest lessons often become our greatest teachers. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that might change your perspective. Third, and most importantly, share this video. Right now, someone in your life is going through their own abandonment story. Someone is pregnant and scared. Someone is choosing between pride and survival. Someone needs to know that Kamari's journey is possible for them too. Be the person who reminds them that hope isn't just a word. It's a decision we make every single day. Drop a comment telling me what part of Kamari's story hit you hardest. Was it the abandonment, the struggle, the triumph, the forgiveness? Your words matter. Your story matters. This community is built on shared experiences and collective strength. And remember what Kamari learned: real wealth isn't counted in dollars. It's counted in lives touched, in children raised with love, in communities built through struggle, in the knowledge that you rose when everyone expected you to fall. I'm Mr. Roman, and this is the Story Vault, where every story leaves you different than it found you. Until next time, remember, tomorrow we try again. And that's always enough. Keep rising. Keep fighting. Keep hoping.